Welcome back, listeners, to a new playoff edition of the New Standard. And the title of today's program, unfortunately, is We're on the Clock. And if you want to join the program, make sure you go to YouTube and do a search for the New Standard and Lance Williams. If you want to join us via podcast, you can do the same however you get your podcast. Please like and subscribe to the program. And as we watch the last 20 seconds of the Steelers 2023-24 season, as we watch the clock tick down, Neil, what are some of your initial thoughts as we see the clock wind down on another Steelers season?
Initial thought is this is awfully familiar. We're used to this. It kind of caps off another reasonably good most of the time season for the Steelers. The last couple of years have looked a lot like this. Final score, I think, probably looks maybe a little bit worse than what this game was, but certainly not in the beginning. The Steelers had their opportunity. They were kicking off down 7, and defense needed to step up and get a stop, and they committed 2 penalties. Gave up a big play on a missed tackle. You're not going to win playoff games like that. So overall, it seems pretty familiar. We've seen this before. I don't think it's as bad a year as many people are going to make it out to be. They're acting like they just finished off a 4-13 season, but you get to a point, 10-7 doesn't matter a whole lot if you continue to not lead ever in a playoff game. And when was the last time they led in a playoff game?
I know. I actually have that answer. The last time they led in a playoff game actually was against Kansas City when TJ
Their last
Watt.
win.
Okay.
No, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They play Kansas City again, the Mahomes era Kansas City, and they did have a lead briefly in that game.
Yeah, and then they got their gates blown off.
Yeah, and then it went downhill. They got
when
their
I look
moral
at this,
win.
when I look at this game, my overall game thoughts are pretty simple. I have the 3 P's, performance, payment, and pedigree. In this game, it's the 2 T's, turnovers and tackling. A lack thereof. Tackling was poor. And that's sort of what they talk about when they talk about basketball, that you have to end every possession in basketball, defensive possession, with a rebound. Schemes, X's and O's, none of that matters if you don't tackle the guy and get the guy to the ground. And we saw that the tackling in this game was inconsistent, and also the turnovers. Not saying had they not turned over the ball, they would have won this game, because I believe, if I'm looking at the final score correctly, they end up losing by 2 touchdowns, 31-17. But if you don't turn the ball over in the red zone, Mason Rudolph doesn't turn it over there, you never know how this game could turn out. It might look a little bit different. It might have looked the same, but turning the ball over on the road in the playoffs when you're a 10-point dog and not tackling well is a recipe for disaster. They fought hard, but ultimately they didn't execute well enough or play well enough to win this game.
No, that's pretty much it. I would add the 1 J for me, which is Jack, which also summarizes the rest of Miles Jack's career. I don't think you'll see him in an NFL uniform again. A horrendous game from him. Very poor. Highlight a lot of what you meant of the missed tackles, but I think the one you were talking about more than anything is Minkah Fitzpatrick's inability to get Shakir to the ground.
Correct.
Who scored really the game clinching touchdown for Buffalo. Great play from him, but Minkah's got to make that tackle. I'm sure he knows that more than anything. Really was a game I would love to say simply there's a TJ Watt sized hole in their defense. That was the difference in the performance. It really wasn't, though. I don't know what Watt would have been really able to do. He's known to make plays. Maybe he makes a play, but at the end of the day, what we're stuck with is 2 turnovers to 0 for Buffalo. Buffalo made the big plays. Pittsburgh did not. Buffalo played with the weather. Pittsburgh did not. I think that might have something to do with, the quarterbacks. And that really kind of comes down to why the superstar quarterbacks win late in the year. They can win in elements. They can win inside, whatever it is. It's not affecting their game a whole lot. And I felt that the Steelers tonight struggled with that. To Mason Rudolph's credit, after a very poor start and a bad interception, I felt he rebounded well, but a day late and a dollar short. Not much you could do trailing by that much, and you're not you don't have the arm strength to throw in that kind of wind. You could see it even on the deeper outs that he was throwing. They fluttered, they floated, they weren't strong, hard passes the way Allen was able to hit on a few of them. And the Steelers did not throw to the middle of the field down the seam much at all this year, and they didn't tonight either. Buffalo had a big advantage with that, and it's a big part of their win. But the real thing, Lance, where does this team go from here? I mean, they're 10-point underdogs. I came fairly close in the score. I said 27-17. Where do the Steelers go at this point now? What is going to be the difference between the last 5 years in the playoffs, out of the playoffs, losing in the first round if they make it? What's going to change?
I want to jump into that. And first of all, I want to jump into a point in a comment from Grayson Brown with the super chat. Thank you, Grayson. Please like and subscribe to the program. Hit that notification bell, that like when you see us on YouTube. Please continue to support the program. And Grayson said, tough break as a Steeler fan. I think it's tough to feel anything after this besides what now? What was the point with that performance? Well, let me give you a little positive in that. Although it was a tough loss, tough losses help fuel future success, in my opinion. I think you get something out of this as a football team, especially for young players, to go in this environment, in these elements, and prepare. And hopefully it stokes the fire of this very good rookie class, and it stokes the fire of these young players and this organization, that they continue to work their ass off in the offseason. However, being said, I think that goes into a lot of the comments on the thread. And you talked about it, Neil, as we look into the narratives moving forward. And you go into a point from, and I want to jump into this comment from Steelers Freak here. And Steelers Freak said, 7 years without a playoff win is a new ugly record since the 1967 era started. Folks can't talk about the dark times between Bradshaw and Ben. This is the darkest. Do you think this is the darkest time?
1,000 different ways to define that, but by what was written, yeah, it's been a long time since they won a playoff game. And this is the most competitive playoff game they've been in. What I was thinking when they were just getting destroyed in the first quarter was it's funny because they're getting drubbed by the Bills, and they've kind of ping-ponged between different AFC teams that have kicked their ass in the playoffs. The Bills would get to the Super Bowl after the first one and just get mauled. It's like this is the same thing now with the Steelers. It's just lasting longer and falling far short of the Super Bowl. It's not good. We know that. I don't know what that really, what point that really solves to anything, but winning a playoff game isn't going to be what people want either. If they won tonight, it's not as if the history will get erased. It's not as if the team would be better next year. And I'm not trying to undermine what we're saying here. My point is same as it was last year. What's going to change? What are they going to do to make this team better than the path that they're currently on? Whether it was darker in 1968, which it certainly was compared to now,
not as many streetlights.
It's that there's that too. It's irrelevant simply because there's nothing that makes me really think this team's going to be better than what they were this season, and a lot of it I think is internal.
I know why, and I know why. I know why you think that, but before I answer why you think that, or take a guess as to why you think that, I want to wish everybody out there a happy MLK Day, a happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Hopefully, you spent some time this day reflecting on his legacy and his contribution to the United States of America and to the world as a whole. I know why you feel that way, Neil, because There is a great chance, two things. There's a great chance that the Steelers' best quarterback on the roster will not be on the roster next year because he's an unrestricted free agent. And the best quarterback on the roster is Mason Rudolph. And they currently do not have an answer at the quarterback position moving forward. You see all these comments in the chat from Creo the Traveler. Offense is weak. Need a QB1. Who will solve that problem? Excuse me. Another comment from Blue Gold. We need a real starting quarterback. Creo jumped in again. You got to have a leader at QB. How will that problem be solved? And the reason why you feel the way you do, Neil, and I feel the same way, is you've got Kenny Pickett starting at quarterback next year. Because I think, worst case scenario, I think Mason Rudolph, outside of that turnover, played well enough in this game where if you're a team that needs a stopgap guy to start Mason Rudolph. You can start Mason Rudolph while you draft a young player and get them ready and have Mason as a backup. He's already been a backup. He's already shown the best qualities of a backup quarterback is that he shuts his mouth and doesn't get pissed off and make statements to the press. He showed a high level of professionalism, and when he got his chance, he played very well and got them to the playoffs. Mason Rudolph, I don't think, is going to be on this roster next year. That is the big problem moving forward, and they don't got a really good starting quarterback. They don't have an answer at QB1, and that's why I think you feel the same, Neil. Same thing.
I think we can go back to what we said all off season, or last 2 years, really. If you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And that's more or less where the Steelers are. You've got issues with the three that you have on the roster. The one set to make $10 million next year that you simply can't pay him. Another who's going to get more than $10 million in free agency. He is not going to sign with the Steelers. It's not a choice of the Steelers. It's probably the choice of Rudolph. I think Rudolph has done enough to earn himself something like a bridge spot somewhere. I could see him, new coach. I don't know what they'll do in Tennessee, but wouldn't surprise me. A place like that gives him a call. I don't know how outstanding Will Levis has been overall, but Rudolph there as a veteran presence that could start as needed. He'll have that kind of opportunity, and he'll get paid to do that. Very similarly to what happened with Mitch Trubisky. So the Steelers, they're in a way kind of forced into the quarterback that they're going to have. I get that there's absolutely no love right now for Kenny Pickett. I'm not suggesting anything other than the fact that this is truthful. Kenny Pickett played well in the one full game that he had outside of Matt Canada. Mason Rudolph probably played probably the worst of the 4 games that he started tonight, and it wasn't a great start by any stretch. He played well with the opportunities that he got. The real question is it impossible for Kenny Pickett to replicate that kind of success if given the opportunity to do so? That question's already answered by the Steelers. I would guarantee you Kenny Pickett is their starter in week 1. They're not going to change that. Affordability, investment, pay, performance, pedigree, to some degree, that's going to go to Pickett, and they're not going to pay $12, $13 million a year to bring Rudolph in to be a backup when he just outplayed Pickett. They want to move on from Rudolph. Rudolph will go elsewhere. Now, the issue is, how problematic is that? What does Kenny Pickett need to do to get better this offseason? It's funny because going with the same theme, that this feels exactly like the same as the last couple of years. I'm not sure there's enough there for him to really do, but the reality is the team as it sits right now has far less of a choice than it does in a lot of things. This isn't a great cap off season. It's not terrible, but it's not great. There's not a ton that they can do. You're into the fat years of TJ Watt's contract. You see how valuable he is this season. It's almost to the point now that you might as well start talking about an extension with him if you want to free up cap space. You can't get rid of him for a long time. There are moves that they can make, but you're not going to find a quarterback that's going to be any better than Pickett will be next year. Even if you say, if certainly not for the dollar, if you say it's Rudolph, okay, is Rudolph really that much better? Either way, they lost this game from the opening kickoff today. They're not close to the Bills. They're not close to the Chiefs. Put Burrow back in there. Maybe they have a little bit more of a fighting chance against the Bengals, but it's not going to improve them a great amount to have Rudolph in there. So why pay $14 million for him? Is he really that much better? I don't think that he is.
Let me jump into this point by Claude Bishop. Big up to Claude. And when you have a fan base saying they better bring back Mason by any means, that just illustrates where the Steelers are in terms of the quarterback position, because we're talking about basically a franchise that is just middling. They're treading water, essentially. If you want to tread water, bring back Mason Rudolph. Bring back Mason Rudolph, and you'll absolutely tread water. I don't think there's a high ceiling there if you bring him back. But switching reels, though.
Yeah, can we dive into something quickly here?
Yeah, let's dive into that.
I wanted to bring this up because I really think this is the bigger question. There have been reports circulating that Mike Tomlin is considering stepping down from the Steelers.
That's where I was going to go
this offseason. And most importantly, he was asked a question about his contract situation just now at his press conference, and he got up and left. I wouldn't suggest that means anything one way or another, except I've been talking about this for several weeks. Okay. I know people think that there's only one avenue here, but Mike Tomlin isn't on the hot seat with the Steelers. I think the Steelers are on the hot seat with Mike Tomlin. And the reason I say that is, for everything that you're complaining about, just imagine a world in which Tomlin agrees with you, but he can't do anything about it in the position that he's in. Think about the contract situation that he has in front of him. Sean Payton's making $20 million a year. I don't give a frog's fat ass what Mike Tomlin says in a press conference about how much money means to him. There is no way he is taking $15 million a year when Payton's making 20. There's no way. Okay, that the money represents a lot more than just cash. It's respect, it's authority, it's that standing among your peers. You're not going to allow that. Yeah.
I like.
Can you blame him? I wouldn't blame him at all. In fact, at this point, I'd be upset if Rooney didn't offer him $20 million, because that's the going rate. At some point, you have to spend or you have to back away. I think they're at that point. And you heard me talking about this, Lance. So what happens now? Now we have everybody talking about the idea that it's not him getting fired. It's him stepping down. And where I'm sitting now, I really don't think that that's off the table. Look at the whole picture.
Let me ask you this, Neil. And Creo keeps typing in the chat about his ability to pick his whole staff and his OC. I've heard rumors that he's not necessarily given complete control over the staff, and that the pick of Canada was not his pick. If that's true, and he is allowed to pick his next OC, plus the money, is that enough to keep him in Pittsburgh?
If you are being asked to cook dinner for a group of people, and the results of that dinner are measured entirely by the quality of the food and how much the people enjoyed it. If you were willingly entering that situation, that challenge, you'd probably insist upon choosing what you were going to cook, right? Absolutely. It only makes sense. While I think everybody spins their tires about this, and you can see it in the comments here too. Really, it comes down to whether you like Mike Tomlin or not. That's the direction you lean to of what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. At the end of the day, you don't know. You simply don't know. You love making stuff up and talking about he's this or he's that or he's the other thing. We don't know where we sit right now, whose decision it was to hire Matt Canada. But at the same time, they're all culpable for it. We don't need to make Matt Canada the center of every decision that Steelers make. They make good decisions. They make bad decisions. They're an NFL team. It's going to happen that way. I don't know. What I know is the Steelers tend to not hire coaches that have ambitions of becoming a head coach. They want workers. They want guys to coach their specific positions, and they want the coordinator to be a leader of men that can bring everybody together and make the best out of what they have. I'm not downplaying Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, great coach, great offensive minds, Kyle Shanahan, who can develop a huge advantage on their own. But the reality is, if you see a guy like that, he's 32 years old right now, and he's going to be a head coach. He's not coming to coach Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh. So is it even worth going after that? I mean, you can go after it. You're just going to waste your time. They're looking to get a guy that's going to provide some continuity of leadership from one year to the next. And there's some value to that. The kicker, though, Lance, the reason is because they're paying Tomlin all the money. The Steelers are not a cash-rich organization. Few football teams are, believe it or not. Their value may be whatever it is, but 2/3 of it's in their stadium. They can't literally take money out of the stadium. They have to pay a $230 million payroll in which they have to have 80% of it in escrow. That's a huge amount of cash. Okay. They pay coaches without a cap on their own negotiations. There's not really a similar market for it. If Tomlin's price is going up, the coordinator's price is going down. Okay. That's the way it is. This is, if you want to put it in baseball terms, big market versus small market. And I said this a while ago, there's going to come a point, law of diminishing returns, the Steelers are not going to be able to afford where Tomlin is anymore. And what's going to happen at that point? Is he going to say, sure, fine, I love it here so much, I have the same pride and honor as every fan here, even though they scream at me on a daily basis how terrible I am? There's going to come a point you're going to want to try something else. That's all I'm saying. Nobody here, believe it or not, has given more to the franchise than Mike Tomlin has.
Yeah.
If he doesn't want to be here anymore, I wouldn't blame him. It's not personal either, though. Let's just say there's a new ownership group that has 80 times more money than the Rooneys do. They need to construct a stadium. They need to repair perhaps the worst image in sports. They need a leader of men. And one who grew up 2 hours away from their stadium might not be a bad option. I'll give you $23 million a year, Mike Tomlin. Come coach for me. If not this year, next year. We'll wait for you. You step down. We'll work out a trade with the Steelers. You come coach the Washington Commanders next year, and you will see what level of coach the Commanders hire this offseason. If you really want to figure it out, they'll have a rookie quarterback next year anyway. I don't know who really wants that job.
I'll tell you who'll hire Tomlin in a second and give him $23 million a year. Tepper in Carolina will give him $23 million.
Tomlin's
just
true.
wouldn't
Tomlin's
take it.
not that stupid. Yeah.
He wouldn't take it. Yeah, but Tepper would give him $23 million in a heartbeat. A lot of questions going into this offseason. Tomlin's future is the big one hanging. And you can't read much, like you said, from his response in the press conference. But, I mean, I can understand who wants to talk about their contract right after losing the playoff game. Like, it's probably,
but it's not exactly professional.
It's not professional to walk out.
And to be fair, the reason I pay attention to it, I'm not trying to chide Mike Tomlin. It's just that he doesn't do that.
Yes.
Ray Fittipaldo, the Post-Gazette, mused that maybe he didn't hear the question. I only heard it in the background. I muted this really quickly. The question seemed clear to me. I think he heard it.
Well,
he doesn't want to talk about it. I get it, and if he wants to step down too, God bless him. I have no problem with that. And you're right. He knows how to put on a show.
He's a great
exiting stage right, though, in the middle of the performance. is not a tool that he uses. So
Yes,
it's interesting.
yes.
It
It
really
is
kind of makes you
outside
wonder.
of his it is outside of his level of cool. Seeing him shaking kind of and outside of his level of cool in the press conference is odd. But that's one of the big things that's hanging over this season. Tomlin's future, new offensive coordinator. But I want to jump into this last question before we conclude the show. And again, please like and subscribe to the program. We are going to take a week off next week. We need to recharge for sure. I know I do. We're going to take a week off unless there's some super breaking news with the Steelers stuff, but we're going to take a week off. So we're not going to bring you a show this upcoming Wednesday. Uh, but this question has been floating around in the chat, and I want to thank everybody that's hopped on the chat. I see a lot of new people react to this. Linwood Langs. These names are always interesting. The Reality Report with Craig and Tony. Big up to you guys. Was
Sounds
the
like something. The reality
23-24
report.
season a successful one?
Oh, I hate this question every damn year. I don't know. It completely depends on what your perspective is. So to me, yes and no. Successful in the sense that they made the playoffs. That has to be a goal. I don't think it's possible to have a successful year without going to the playoffs. To once again finish at the same point, kind of slightly a little bit closer than what you have previously. That makes me say no overall. I think you figured some things out. I think some of the mistakes you made last offseason were exposed. I think you have a pretty clear path of the things now that you need to do. It just all seems very much like last season when they didn't go to the playoffs. A little bit better record, but by and large, the same team. Very similar results. Overall, no. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a failure, but I don't think the presence of success is really there either. There are teams that would have rather gone to the playoffs, so that's a good thing, I guess. But they probably fell short of where they should have been and could have been a lot better than they were.
I'm going to say, in terms of Steeler Nation, I'm going to say that most of Steeler Nation, because of the Steelers' history, will say that this was not a successful season, because we know with Steeler Nation, once you've got 6 rings and you've got the most, every year that you don't win a Super Bowl is not a successful one. That's the hard and fast truth for most Steeler fans. I'll say this though. I think the success of the season hinges itself on what your expectations for the season were. I don't think any of us realistically thought that this team had an opportunity to win a championship. And I think if you did, you were probably just smoking some black and gold, la 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 la. Uh, and so, with that being said, to not belabor the point, I thought the Steelers would be 11-6. I think I predicted. You picked 10-7. So from a regular season record standpoint and where they are, I think this season is a success for me. I thought this team is exactly what I thought it was. I thought it was a team that was slightly above average because they had issues at the quarterback position. And, that offensively, I didn't think they would get it solved. And that's what happened this year. So them getting to the playoffs, competing in the playoffs, I thought it was a successful year. I don't think they could have done or were good enough to be any better than what we saw and what it ended up being. So I think it was a successful season.
Overall, it's going to come down to how you wanted to define success. And asking the question means we have to put up with the same bullshit about well, that's all they want to do now is finish over 500. It's the stupidest thing in the world. It's just idiotic. Just stop. No, that obviously is not all they want to do. Is that all that they've done? Yeah. Nobody denies that. Nobody's arguing with that. You get off more on Mike Tomlin's consecutive non-losing season streak than more than anybody does. Okay, it's the people that hate it. Deal with it. I don't know what else to tell you. They need a lot of things though, and this is not a great year to go out and spend a bunch of money. They spent money last year. They hoped it would carry through, but you've got a major decision on Cam Hayward. I just told you why it's stupid. Your name is stupid too, by the way. That's just dumb. Reality to you is not reality to the rest of the normal world. You should think about that. You have a major decision you need to make on Cam Hayward. You have a major decision you need to make on Deontay Johnson. I don't think that it's a real tough decision. Mitch Trubisky shouldn't be back. Certainly not at that salary. Allen Robinson, same way. I'm not against bringing Allen Robinson back, but he was never going to make $11 million next year. You've got, those are probably your 4 biggest decisions you need to make. The rest of it's up to internal improvement. You have to get it, as we saw, unfortunately, tonight, you've got to get better pass protection from Broderick Jones. That was a pretty rough game for him. I sincerely hope and pray for all of the money that they invested in the inside linebacking group for all of them to suffer multiple injuries. Mark Robinson went down tonight. I don't know if you noticed that or not. He was out with a concussion. So they had everybody. Roberts, of course, got hurt. Roberts has been hurt every week for the last 2 months. They had Jack was the only healthy inside linebacker, and he was the last inside linebacker you wanted on the field. He was the last player you wanted on the field. The whole thing, it blew up in the wrong places at the wrong times. They can get better internally. They're not going to be able to add a whole lot in terms of free agency. But as I tweeted this earlier, this is a big offseason for their pro scouting department because they're going to have to find guys that can play now and get them for cheap. You know, Cole Holcomb level, but even cheaper than Cole Holcomb. And hope that Cole Holcomb comes back 100% healthy, by the way. He was playing really well before he went down. That was a big loss that they had to swallow this season. A lot of things that they have to do. A lot of things that will come, and we'll find out what those things are going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And of course, we will jump into the roster and jump into some of the needs on both sides of the ball. I think the inside linebacker point that you made was really a good one. And Reality Report is not that serious, but he piped down in the comments. But I think it goes back to the inside linebacker thing, is what you said years ago about Ryan Shazier. When you called that, and that's what I was thinking about during this game. But we'll break it down a little bit more about, that whole, replacing that type of player, having that rangy type of 3-down situational backer that can play in the middle of your defense. But with that, I mean, it was another year. Steelers fought hard up in Orchard Park. Hopefully, whoever went to the game was safe. Man, another disappointing year, somewhat. I think it was a successful year, but unfortunately, they're not going to win another championship. Next week sets up a matchup, another matchup between Mahomes and Josh Allen, this time in Buffalo. I'm sure that will be exciting. And I want to thank everybody. And I can, thank.
Not bitter at all.
I want to thank everybody for riding with us. Of course, the show does not end in the business season, and we probably do our best work in the business season. Actually, honestly, the business season just turns out to being.
We've got coaching rumors, which we never have in Pittsburgh. You've got an offensive coordinator you need to hire, which is going to depend on your coaching rumors. From there, you've probably got a tithing of the staff. There are a lot of guys that are going to go. They're going to be hiring a lot of people. That's not even personnel. They got plenty of personnel issues. This is going to be a news-packed offseason for the Steelers, and that's definitely a good thing.
And we're going to absolutely bring it to you. And remember, out of the mountain of despair comes a stone of hope. And I just wanted to leave you guys with that quote from Martin Luther King as we commemorate and celebrate Martin Luther King Day and the Steelers, and unfortunately, the end of the Steelers 23-24 season. But with that, we are going to conclude the program. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Go Steelers.